Hi, this is the reading for September of 2020 for the sign of Gemini. Um, and this will apply if your moon sign is Gemini, if your sun sign is Gemini, or if your rising sign is Gemini. Also, your part of fortune sign, if it's Gemini as well, this will apply. And to preface this reading, this is a collective reading, which means that basically um, it's for a lot of different people at once. With those planets or points in Gemini, or otherwise other planets in Gemini, especially if there's a few planets in Gemini that aren't those planets or points, then this could very well apply to, especially where there's more than one planet in the sign in your natal chart. Uh, to preface this, around roughly 8% or so of the population has their uh, has their sun sign in Gemini. So, and again, roughly around 8% of the population has their moon sign in Gemini, and roughly around 8% more or less of the population has their rising sign in Gemini as well. So if you add those together, then probably around, you know, 25% or so of the population or more has a rising sign or a moon sign or a sun sign in Gemini. So this isn't going to apply for 25% of the human population in the world. So it's a general reading. It can't apply for every person with those Gemini placements. No general reading can that any tarot reader does, no matter how good they are, can apply for every single person. Yeah. So with that being said, take what resonates and leave the rest. Some of it's going to apply for some people, and a lot of it's going to apply for some people, and a middle amount is going to apply for some people, and not much is going to apply for other people, right? So um, take what resonates and leave the rest. Sorry. Allergies. Yeah. Okay. I just rolled the astro dice to get the planetary or astrological influences for September 2020 for Geminis. Um, and we have Jupiter in Aquarius in the fifth house. Hmm. Um, hmm. That's an interesting combination. Um, Jupiter represents expansion and opportunity. Um, Aquarius is a sign that represents like groups and uh, organizations and structures, namely social structures and such like that. Um, it's a fixed air sign. It's the domicile of Saturn. And the fifth house represents it represents speculation. It represents love affairs. It represents younger people. It represents creativity, creative self-expression. Um, Jupiter in the fifth, in Aquarius in the fifth, would indicate opportunities coming through other people. Opportunities coming from perhaps romantic partners, opportunities perhaps coming from younger people, um, opportunities coming from uh, Aquarius type people, um, intellectual, perhaps detached emotionally, um, um, yeah, eccentric people, yeah. Um, oh, that's good. That's a lot better. Anyway, in the first position, we have the Eight of Wands. The first card in Celtic crossbred represents where the person is at around the beginning of the month, and it represents basically their starting position, um, basically where their headspace is at, what's happening to them, what they're doing. Basically they're kind of it's a central energy or archetype or pattern that's happening that most represents the native of the person that the reading is done for, which is Geminis, during September to 2020. Just a second. So anyway, the Eight of Wands in the significator position or the present position or whatever you want to call it um, of the spread. Yeah, the significator, I'd say it is. It's also, it represents the present position as well. The first card, it's a significator and the present position, I'd say. Anyway, um, it means that things are coming. It means native wands primarily represents like rapid manifestation or things happening rapidly. It represents rapid movement and fast movement, swift movement. It's actually called swiftness in thought, the book of in the Aleister Crowley deck, anyway. And in the Aleister Crowley deck, it's actually represented by lightning bolts flashing across the card. So yeah, it represents obviously rapid energy and rapid movement, which means that during the month of September 2020 for Geminis, they can expect things to move along pretty quickly. They can expect things to that things that are happening, they're going to happen fast, and that the things that are set in motion are gonna are gonna are going to manifest and or reach conclusions like quickly, and that they're going to move along fast, or at the very least that they're going to move along pretty fast, faster than expected perhaps. And that's that's also accounting for like present situations as well, or present circumstances that are still in the process of happening. In September, you could expect those circumstances to move along quicker, to um, gain speed and momentum, whatever may be happening in your lives, whether it's positive or negative. So, um, this is the second card, which is the surrounding energies for Gemini for September 2020. It's the Queen of Pentacles. What this indicates is that surrounding the native during September 2020 for Geminis, there's there could be a person around them. The Queen of Pentacles would represent um, an earthy woman, um, uh, someone, an owner or manager of resources, um, a woman with a certain level of authority and accomplishment in the world, um, a mature woman, it indicate, um, older woman, a conservative woman generally, um, at the very least, like fiscally conservative and such. Uh, a nurturing woman, um, and that this woman could be uh, someone who plays a more pivotal role this month than they would perhaps otherwise in native's life. It could be a new person coming in, or it could be a person already in their life, in your life, Geminis, during September of 2020. It could be, yeah, a new woman coming in, or someone already um, in your life that's that plays a more prominent role this time during this month than they do normally during other months. So yeah, um, um, there's a nurturing energy that surrounds you as well during September 2020. Um, Perhaps you're feeling more nurturing than usual, Gemini, or perhaps there's, you're being nurtured more as well, or perhaps it's a combination of both. Um, it's, yeah, it's hard to say for sure because this isn't a specific reading, it's a general reading, right? So it's for a lot of different people. So yeah, but yeah, those are different possibilities for that. This is the card, Gemini, that surrounds you, that crosses you during September of 2020. It's the Judgment card. It's the Trump card number 20, and this is the card that crosses you during the month of September of 2020. Um, the Judgment card crossing you. Um, if you look at the card, it's one of the last trumps. It's the second last trump card, the deck. And it represents, well, it represents judgment. um, if you look at it, it's depicted as like there's an angel and he's playing a trumpet, right? And he's in the sky, and there's all these people below him that have been resurrected. So there's obvious like Christian symbology to this card um, that was used. What it represents is like it represents judgment. You know, it could be divine judgment. It could be judgment from people, um, institutions. It could be judgment from. It could be judgment. It's judgment in general. You know, and the sources could vary. You know, they could take a number of possible manifestations um, in a singular sense, or they could take several manifestations in a plural sense as well. So, Gemini, during um, September of 2020, what this represents is that you have the archetype or energy of judgment crossing you. Which means that essentially that you're being evaluated for past actions. It means that you're being evaluated during September of 2020. You're going to be evaluated for your past actions and your decisions and choices, and those actions are going to be evaluated and assessed, and by possibly, um, various entities, or it depends on which, it depends on it depends on the Gemini watching this, which Geminis are watching this. Some could be under judgment and with past actions being evaluated by some people, or one person, or a government institution, or or by divine source, like maybe like God, or some because it does represent an angel on there, passing judgment. um, or it could be any number of these things. It could be, like I said, it could be singular or plural, and the in the entities and the type of entities judging you during September 2020 and evaluating your past actions. So essentially what this means is that September 2020, it's a time of going into September of 2020. It's, and for September of 2020, um, it's a time of where you're going to be evaluated. Jeez, sorry. But yeah, you're going to be evaluated for your choices and actions in the past. And if they were the right ones, then if they were the right ones, then that's one thing. Um, if they were the wrong ones, then that's another. Then if they were the wrong choices, then maybe it'd be best to try to change those choices, or to try to fix them, or to make amends for them if they can't be fixed. Um, because that'll help whatever judgment is being you're under, or whatever scrutiny, to be assessed in a more favorable sense, um, and to, yeah, so that, moreover, this is a time of judgment of yourself as well. You're going to be likely looking at your past actions and last decisions as well, and past actions and past decisions as well, and evaluating them, evaluating, whether they were justified or not. And in a situation where, perhaps you're not, if it was one of those decisions where it was a hard decision, and or you did have the right data at the time, where you just, or a decision where you kind of just didn't really have the full like picture, and you just kind of you know made a decision that was provisional, and perhaps or decisions that were provisional, or sloppy, then yeah, it's a good month. It's a good time to fix those things, or try to, in whatever way you can. If you can, some things can be taken back and some can't. And there's wisdom in knowing the difference between the two, and which to, yeah, some things they can't be taken back, but at least the person can make amends for them or try, in whatever way they can, right? Or in, if they're capable of doing it, right? Um, hmm. The card does represent an angel looking down. So for some Geminis, there could be like very well um, divine presences or um, divine forces assessing you and seeing, assessing your choices and your actions and evaluating you based on those. Because the reality is, people, they can try to assess other people. They can try, you know. But the reality is, um, like me, for instance, like um, I have beyond a gifted level of intelligence. I had that tested and proven. Um, and, you know, I'm pretty intuitive as well. Um, I'm an empathic, right? Sensitive to other people's emotions and things like that. Um, and even me, like I'm a more advanced soul than most people would, and be in the as far as um, I'd be a more advanced soul than most people would be, in a theoretical sense and spiritual sense, right? Um, like um, talking in spiritual matters and divinatory manners, right? Manners. Um, most of my core numbers in my numerology chart are master numbers. Three or the four of them are. And my astrology chart is really strong as well. Like all my planets are dignified, and so these things indicate them an advanced soul. Um, so like in that sense, like I could say that a lot of people would say that um, more advanced than most people. Um, but even someone like me, like I can I can read people and assess them and stuff like that. I can get a better picture of them than most people could, because I can easily put myself in their shoes, right? Because the majority of people, they're not as smart as me, and they're not as like intuitive either, right? But even even for me, like it's it's impossible to fully um, for me to know what it's like to be, the person next to me, because I'm not that person. You know, I'm not God, so I can't put myself, inside their body and inside their mind and relive all their memories and all their, I can't do that, and no person can, you know. And it's especially harder, if the person is assessing someone who's like above them intellectually. It's even harder then, because then the person who's trying to assess that person is trying to put themselves in the shoes of someone. It's like of someone who's more advanced than they are. It's like a computer emulator, right? Like today's computers, they can emulate, Nintendo 64, right? Or PlayStation, right? Or PS2, older hardware, right? Um, but if you try to get a 486 computer to emulate like a PlayStation 2, uh, it's not really going to work very well. Yeah. Regardless of how powerful the graphics card is, because simply the processors would be so far below it. It wouldn't be able to do it. It just wouldn't. You know. So it's the same with people. Like some people, like if they're more intelligent and more knowledgeable and more intuitive generally than the person, or at least some of those things, at least most of those things, than the person that they're assessing, then maybe they'll be able to get a decent you know um, picture of the person, maybe. But even then, it's not guaranteed, because the person doing the assessing, they may be smarter, they may be more knowledgeable, they may be more intuitive, but they're still not God, so they can't put themselves in the other person's shoes, right? And it doesn't matter how much bravado, or how much confidence they have in their ability to magically um, know exactly who another person is. Because some people have that. They have that bravado that they just, oh, I know this person, even though even though I don't know this person, I know this person apparently. Some people are like that, right? And but for them, they're not God. You know, maybe in their own minds they are, but they're not God. So yeah, maybe a person who's more intelligent and more knowledgeable and more intuitive, they can read people better than average. They're more capable of putting themselves into the person's shoes. But even then, they're not God. I'm not God, and none of us are God, according to my knowledge. Hey, if God's watching, then hey, big guy, I'm glad to have you as a viewer. Okay, yeah, really glad. Anyway, but yeah, you can read people. Okay, I'm not saying you can't. But I'm just talking about like us, like humans here. So yeah, didn't mean to offend you if you're watching, big guy. So Anyway, the point of the story is that the point of this segue is that you know people can assess or try to assess another individual. They can try, but the reality is that even if the person is less advanced than they are, they're still not going to have a perfect picture of it, because they're not God and they can't put themselves inside the other person's body and head and relive all their experiences and all that stuff, right? And know everything that the person that they're assessing knows, right? Um, so even then, it's not perfect. But and that's if the person who's doing the assessing is more advanced than the person that's being assessed. And that's not always the case, right? But so people, they can get their intuitions or their hunches, or they can get their you know they can have their opinions, and their opinions may be based on reality and logic, or they may not be. They could just be feelings, or just various prejudices, you know, or things within themselves that they don't like, that that the other person triggers. It could be projections. There's a lot of factors that goes on when people assess each other, right? And there's a lot of there are miscalculations involved, in some cases. There are miscalculations involved in most every case, actually. It's hard, like in pretty much every case, there's miscalculations. And in the ideal cases, there'll be, you know, a lot of right answers and, a few miscalculations. But those are ideal circumstances. In average circumstances, there'll be there'll be some right insights, and there'll be some that are completely off the mark. And that's in general sense. When people try to assess each other, half of it's fucking bullshit and half of it may be true. And those are generally those are most of the situations. um and in a lot of cases still, there'll be most of it will be untrue, and some of it will be true. you know so it's hard to, like I said, it's hard for people to assess other people accurately, especially like 100% accurately. I don't think it really can be done. I don't know what it's like to be the person next to me, because I haven't lived their life and I'm not them. It doesn't matter if that person has 50 points of IQ less than I do. It doesn't matter if I know like 3 times or 4 times as much as that person. It does matter to an extent, because I'm better able to put myself in their shoes, right? It matters to an extent. And it matters that if I'm more intuitive, right, than the person that I'm trying to assess. But even with all those factors, they matter, but they don't allow me to like fully see who that person is and to know what it's like to be them. Regardless of those things, they just make it a bit easier, and they make for potentially fewer errors. They generally make for fewer errors, those, having those factors. But the difference between that and spiritual forces is that, like God, you know, divinity, like whatever you want to call it, they can see, they can judge, and they can put themselves in your shoes, and they can put themselves in people's shoes, and they can go inside their heads, and they can, you know, basically, rewind all their memories and, play them back in an instant, because they exist. Some of these entities, like God and stuff like that, and some of the archangels and stuff like that, some of the higher gods, like they exist beyond linear time. So for them, a million years from now and a billion years ago and now are all the same. And for people, we can barely even comprehend that. I've thought about it for a while, and I can comprehend it better than most people, but even me, like, it's it's a bit of a mind-blowing idea, right? So they have access to abilities and means of assessment. Primarily, means of assessment is what, like, I'm talking about, that allow them to better understand your choices and to assess people than other people can. So it's important that your actions this month in September 2020, Gemini, that you act ethically and responsibly, and that the choices that you make are coming from a place morality and consciousness and reflection. Because the more that they miss the mark, then the more that you know um, the more likely it is that you could be judged you know as having um, you could be judged as um, having failed or having not done what's right or having um, acted improperly or badly. I need water. Jeez Louise. Moreover, like I said, the judgment card, it represents judgment from all kinds of sources and all kinds of entities potentially. So with that being said, with the judgment card crossing you, that even if you do the right thing, and you make the right choices and all that, Geminis during September 2020, um, that you could be receiving judgment from people or other entities or you know groups or whatever, organizations or whoever that may disagree with you, and that judgment could be something that crosses you from certain people. No matter what choice you make, you could make the right choice or you can make the wrong choice. If you make the right choice, then some people will judge you to be, who believe in the wrong choice. They may judge you to be, a bad person. right? Or evaluate you negatively. And then if you make the bad choice, then there are some people who, they, believe that you should have made the right choice. They'll judge you negatively. So I think one thing to remember from this is that no matter what choice you make, what choices you make during this month, you're going to be judged by some people, negatively and positively. You're going to be judged by some people negatively, and then you're going to be judged by other people positively. No matter what choice you make, whether it's the right choice or the wrong choice, or the right choices or wrong choices, it doesn't matter. You're going to get judged by some people, no matter what you do. Some people are going to judge you to be, you're going to be elevated in their eyes, right? And other people, you're going to be go down a level in their eyes. So it's something to remember. But I guess the best advice I could give would be probably to act as if you're being watched by God or an angel. And act yourself, what's right. And to make the best choices you can. And at the end of the day, like I said, no matter what choices you can make all the wrong choices, and some people will praise you. You can make some people will demonize you. And you can make all the right choices, and some people will praise you, and other people will demonize you. So doing what's right, is, important. So, because, no matter what you do, you're going to get judged by some people. So I guess the most important judgments that each of us has to face is with God and with ourselves. So to base your decisions this month on what's moral and ethical and what's factual and right, rather than pressure from others, or or the decisions that you make this month. It's important to reflect on them. It's important to reflect on your past actions. It's important to look at things objectively. It's important to look at things as if you're being, evaluated by, divine sources that can evaluate you. Not necessarily because, they're going to punish you if you don't do this or that or whatever. You do this, it's not necessarily about that. It's not really about that so much. It's about feeling, right about yourself at the end of the day, more so. People, they can only do the best they can. If they mess up, then, they can do what they can, and that's it. That's all we can ever do as people. We can do the best we can. We can laugh, we can just, when someone's actually saying something, significant or meaningful, like a fool will just laugh, right? but a wise person will actually listen. You know, the truth is that your choices matter, Gemini, during September of 2020. Your choices mattered a lot. You know, they probably matter more than ever now. You know, or they matter. They matter a lot now. You know. You know, and the best advice I can give, you know, is to, you know, think things through and to endeavor to do what's right. Anyway, the fourth card is the Nine of Swords, which isn't the most positive looking card. It represents a person in their bed having nightmares, right? So this is your foundation for September 2020. What does this represent? Well, it represents that there's a lot of anxiety, you know, present in present circumstances for Gemini during September 2020. Um, it represents going into September 2020 a lack of sleep, um, perhaps insomnia, restlessness, anxiety, stress, you know, confusion. You know. Well, what does this indicate? Well, what's the advice anyway? I already said what it indicates, but what's the advice then? Well, the advice would be, well, for one, this card represents insomnia. So it'd be a good idea to get sleep. It'd be a good idea to get, you know, to sleep well, you know, get adequate rest, you know. Um, it's a card of fantasies, you know, the Nine of Swords. It primarily represents, it represents things that are inside the person's head that may or may not be real. You know. In a general sense, with this card, the things that the person is imagining here and crying over, they're not real. They're all in their head. It's a nightmare or, you know, confusion, or just, you know, their stress or anxiety, you know, playing games with them. And that's how it is for a lot of people. You know, a lot of people, they may experience stress or anxiety over circumstances or events or people. But the reality is that a lot of the cases, you know, in some of the cases it's true. But in the cases depicted by this card, the Nine of Swords, it's generally not true. It's generally in the person's head. It's generally a bunch of imagined, you know, dragons or, you know, um, whatever, you know, whatever the person's afraid of. Maybe they're afraid of, you know, 50-foot fucking Smurfs, you know. Who knows? Maybe that's what they're afraid of. If that's the case, and, you know, this person's imagining, you know, 50-foot Smurfs, you know, about to pick him up and eat him. But the reality is they're not there. And the person's just lying in bed, you know, and they have their eyes closed. The person in this card has their eyes closed. Well, it has their eyes covered anyway. It's the same deal. Same deal. Which means he can't see, which means he's blinded to objective reality. So the advice, again, another piece of advice would be to be more objective and to be more and that, you know, perhaps the things that, you know, the things that have been giving you anxiety, Geminis, during September of 2020 are things that are in your head. some of them anyway, you know, and that, you know, they're not real. They're just fantasies and illusions, you know, a mirage, you know. And generally with this card, they're self-created mirages. You know, like I said, a lot of people, you know, they're influenced by their subconscious minds, right? Heavily influenced by their subconscious minds to the point where, you know, their subconscious minds basically dominate most of their actions. There aren't a lot of people who are conscious. You know, most people are basically living on the majority of people are living, you know, in a sleepwalking state. They're asleep. You know, they're just doing what they're doing, and they don't really even know why they're doing what they're doing. But they're driven to do what they do based off, you know, their memories, based off their childhood, you know, based off like repressed emotions and feelings and desires, right? Based on, you know, if I act this way or do this, then, you know, the world will like me more. You know, I'll be accepted more. I'll be validated more if I do this and that, and, you know, take this stance over that stance. And, you know, I'll get this person's approval and that person's approval, and, you know, it just, you know, there's a various, you know, and the thing is, if in a lot of these cases, the person who's doing these things or doing whatever it is, you know, that they're doing them without even realizing in a lot of cases what their hidden motivations are. So a lot of people in their heads, you know, for a lot of people, most people's entire reality is a completely subjective fantasy. Think about that for a minute. Most people's entire reality is a completely subjective fantasy. In India, they talk about this. There's a word for it. It's called Maya. And it's something that, according to the Indian sages and such like that, gurus and all that, they say that Maya is a state of living that the majority of people are living under, the vast majority. And by vast majority, I mean like roughly like over like 80% of people are living under Maya. And what is Maya? Well, it roughly translates to illusion and fantasy. It means that the enlightened people of that culture and other enlightened people believe the same thing from other cultures too. They just have different words for it. Um, that the majority of people, the things that they're, you know, chasing, and the things that they're and that they value, and the beliefs that they hold true, aren't true, and the things that they value don't really matter as much as they think it does. You know, the things that they think are important aren't as important as they think they are. The things that they think are um, the things that they think are unimportant are perhaps more important than they think they are. And that, you know, a lot of like, for instance, you know, like, um, think of a person who, you know, they spend, you know, $2,000 on a pair of shoes from Gucci or fucking, you know, God knows whatever. I don't give a crap whoever hell makes those ridiculously expensive shoes that, you know, I sure as hell am not gonna buy. Yeah, whoever it is that does that, um, you know, for them, you know, that's important. You know, $2,000 pair of shoes. Well, why is it important for them? Why is a $2,000 pair of shoes important for a person? Why would it be? Well, let's see. You know, there's the social and validational aspect to it, right? And that's, and that's inside the person's own head, right? That's inside the person's own head, just like this card, right? So like a person who, values a $2,000 pair of shoes, you know, and thinks that a great investment, like what they're thinking is, okay, if I wear this pair of shoes by Gucci, right, then that validates me. That says that I've arrived. It means that I have social status. It means that I have, um, I'm important now. It means that I have a higher value than I would without the shoes, right? And if I have these shoes, then other people will see that and they'll value me more. And they'll see me as, they'll see me in a higher light because I have this $2,000 pair of shoes, right? But is that true? Who knows? Maybe. Sure, I guess there's some people who, value them more because they, oh, look at this person, they can afford to waste their money on, ridiculous shoes, right? So some people are into that, they'd be like, okay, cool. Well, I think more of you now, yeah. So, and I guess they're right in a certain extent, right? But then there are other people that look at them as like, so you spent $2,000 on a pair of shoes. And they're thinking, why the fuck would they care about a pair of shoes that much? Unless they're just trying to do it to gain, approval from others. And then they think, well, if they're trying to gain, if they're that thirsty for approval and validation from others to buy a $2,000 pair of shoes, then this person must have a really weak sense of like, self-esteem. So those people, they'll look at the person who buys the $2,000 pair of shoes and they'll be like, what the fuck? Stay away from me, buddy. Right? So, their reputation is going to gain in some people's eyes and fall in others, right? And moreover, in people that, are decent with money, they're going to be like, $2,000 on a pair of shoes? Are you kidding me, man? Even rich, the reality is, here's a little secret for you, segues into a spiritual lesson as well. It's that, there's this idea that rich people, spend all this money on all this expensive clothing. It's not true. Those clothing manufacturers that, make that fucking shit, Gucci and blah, blah, blah. I don't fucking know. I don't know I don't know the names. Sorry, I swear. Anyway, I don't know the names of these damn companies. I don't care to know them really fucking. I like, some of the rap songs about them, that's about it. But anyway, regarding those, there's this idea, that rich people, they waste their money on this, Gucci, Dolce, Cabana, blah, 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 yeah, Dolce, Cabana, banana, or whatever the fuck, I don't know, whatever the hell it is, right? Whatever brand, whatever, I don't know, God knows, fucking, manufacturer that manufactures this, dribble, um, whatever one it may be, these companies, rich people generally don't buy their shit. Rich people are, too smart to fucking pay for that crap. Fucking, it's not, the easiest thing for a person to become rich while also fucking buying $2,000 pairs of shoes, pants that cost, $1,500, and they're gonna be replacing them every goddamn like fucking few months too. So like they're buying a whole new wardrobe every year or whatever. I don't know. And what theoretically some of these like rich people who are like rumored to do that, they'll buy this, spend all this money on these ridiculous expensive clothes, and then they'll wear them once or twice, and then they'll buy a whole new set of them. That's a myth, primarily. You know why? Generally, the rich people, they'll get their clothes given to them by these companies, by, Dolce Gabbana and whatever the fuck they're called, Gucci and all that stuff. Those companies, they'll literally give their clothes to the rich people so that the rich people will wear them and advertise them to people who, want to be rich, or people who want to have the social status of a rich person. So they don't even pay for that shit. They'll just take them because they're free clothes. Fuck. Sure, I'll fucking advertise your shit, buddy. Fucking okay. Why not, right? Makes sense for them. Fucking, they get to wear, $2,000 fucking shoes, and for free. You know, what's the price that they have to pay for it? Well, the only price is that they just influence other people that to think that this is actually something, a significant investment. That's the only factor right there. So what's the point of all this? Well, the point is that there are a lot of things that matter inside of people's heads. And, different people, they're going to have different things that matter to varying degrees, right? But across the board, what you can count on in most cases is that a lot of the things that matter to people, they don't really matter. And a lot of things that don't matter to people do matter. And that, some people, for things, some people that matter, some things that matter to people, they do matter. And for other people, or people, like, things that don't matter, they don't matter. But the reality is that for a lot of people, a lot of the things that they think matter don't, or a lot of the things that they think are real aren't. So, you know, it takes reflection and time, wisdom and purity of heart to decipher those things, and time, to decipher what matters and what doesn't, what's fantasy, what's an illusion, what's real. It takes wisdom, it takes understanding, it takes compassion, it takes heart, it takes faith, all these things. It takes good character, it takes time, it takes patience to decipher what's real and what's a fantasy. So I guess the foundation, that being this card being the foundation card of everything being in his head, this is important time to decipher what's real and what's a fantasy, what's an illusion, what's reality. And that if you do that during this month, Gemini's, during September of 2020, then the results will be better. If you invest that time into deciphering what's real and what isn't, what's an illusion, what's a bad dream, what's reality. What's Maya? This is the fifth card of the reading for September 2020 for Geminis. This is the Eight of Swords. Excuse me. Hey, that wasn't even a full burp. Jeez. Come on. I owe you guys more than that. Come on. But anyway, I'm trying to be funny. I did say I was succeeding. But anyway, yeah, this is the Eight of Swords, and this is the fifth card. It represents energies that are that have brought you to this situation, or the month that you're to September of 2020. It represents it represents the it represents actions. It represents past circumstances that brought you into the month of 2020 that led you to this point of September 2020. And what does this card signify? Well, it primarily represents excuses. It represents a victim mentality. It represents feeling trapped or limited when the person is actually in a prison that's created by themselves. And if anyone wants to look at the meanings of these cards, like, feel free, and you'll see those are, some of the primary significations that I listed off. But I'm just good at combining them and kind of I'm intuitive too, so I can see deeper patterns and all that, and have original insights as well. But those are the basic textbook definitions of this card: victim mentality, excuses, being in a prison of your own creation, being trapped of your own creation, feeling trapped or limited your circumstances, when in reality it's the person experiencing those who's created those situations for themselves. And the person's blindfolded too, which means they're blind to reality. You see, that's where these two cards are similar. You see, their eyes are closed both times, or their eyes can't see in both cases. You see what I mean? In one case, his hands are blocking his eyes. In another case, a bandana or something, a cloth is covering his eyes, right? Or her eyes. And these are the last two cards. So that indicates that for Geminis, during September 2020, or going into September 2020, that the actions or archetypes or patterns that led you here are based on excuses or limiting beliefs, or a victim mentality would have been, something that has brought you here to this point, having that, and also as well, if this card in the what's behind you position, that's what this card is. It's card number 5, the what's behind you card, Celtic cross. It also indicates that in the past, leading up to September 2020 for Geminis, that they didn't have access to all the information, that they were blind in the past, that they didn't have access to all the data, and that they made decisions based on, not having the full picture. Because as you can see, the person here they're blind. So going into September 2020 for Geminis, there were those factors that led up to September. Here's what crowns you. It's card number 6. It's the Two of Cups. It's a very positive card. Very positive card. It represents love. It can represent like romantic love, right? But it can also represent like friendships or cooperation, or peace, or things like that. Harmony, balance, even exchange, and reciprocity, fair boundaries, things like that, right? So the Two of Cups in the crowning position during September 2020 indicates that there's a possibility for having, a harmonious relationship of some sort. And it could be, it could be a friendship, it could be a romantic relationship, it could be acquaintance, or business partnership, or something like that. You know, it's generally between two people. It generally represents one-on-one relationships of some sort, and it could mean all those things are possible during the month of September 2020 to a higher extent than they normally are, or it could mean that one of those things, or a few of those things are. So it depends on which Gemini you are and how this resonates for you. But as I said, this is the crowning card. It's number 6. So it represents an energy or a pattern or circumstances or possibilities that are possible but may not happen. And it depends on the choices that you make. It depends on the choices you make, whether that happens or not. So yeah. So I guess in combination with the other cards, what that would indicate is treat others how you'd want to be treated. Put yourself in their shoes, and have empathy, and understanding, and outcomes will likely be better. And um, relationships with others will be better. You know, regardless of the relationship it is. You know, um, yeah. Anyway, this is card number 7, which is influences. It represents the near future, which is roughly the middle of September. We have the Page of Wands. What this indicates is it can represent a person, a younger person, because pages always represent younger people. It can represent a fire sign person, because it's the Page of Wands. And the Wands cards correspond to fire sign people. So it can represent, a young fire sign person being prominent in your life in that time. It could also represent it could also represent news or messages, happening around that time, important ones, around the middle of the month, like messages back and forth, communication, it could represent that being, something significant playing out, or something, important too. It could represent a person. It may not. It depends which Gemini's watching this, which Geminis are watching. Whether it's a person or a circumstance or news or messages or some combination of those things. It could also represent that you, Geminis, will be more enthusiastic and more enthusiastic around the middle of September. That you may be more energetic, that you may be motivated more so to take action or do something, or to start something, or to or to communicate. could represent any of those things. Yeah. Depending on, which of you are watching this, it, like I said, take what resonates and leave the rest. But those are just possibilities. Like I said, the reality of tarot is that, it can give you, tarot readings and stuff like that. It can give you, potentials, that are at play, and give you an idea of, things that are happening, and possibilities and guidelines or suggestions or advice and all that. But the reality is people have free will. So, it's important to remember that these readings, these readings, they give a bit of a, a divine maybe instruction booklet or, guidebook, or maybe it doesn't give you, a cheat sheet necessarily. It gives you, it may give you a bit, it'll give you more insight for sure, but especially if it's done by a good reader, which I am. But it's not necessarily, it doesn't trump your free will. Your free will is your free will. This is only this is, this is something that's, it's something that at its best is, designed to, help people make better choices if they can, so that they can, be better people and be, and because as people, we all want to make the right choices, right? And we don't want to make the bad ones, and it's not even just because, a punishment. It's because of, it's because of moral considerations too. At the end of the day, all of us want to feel good about ourselves, so, and we want to feel good about the choices that we make, right? So it's important to, it's important to view it in that lens, as something that's, it's guidance rather than, okay, this is going to happen and that's going to happen and blah, blah, blah. It's not necessarily like that. It's just potentials that are at play. Anyway, this is card number 8, which is the energies. This is how Gemini should perhaps present themselves during September 2020, Geminis. And it's not the best card. It's its primary signification is poverty and anxiety and stress. So I guess with that card, that's a weird card to have, is how should you present yourself during September 2020, right? It's not very positive. Like, I think that a better card would be more ideal, right? And that's the tricky part about that placement. It's an interesting placement, geez. I don't see ones like that very often. I've done a lot of readings before, like Jesus. I haven't seen that many, that card in that specific position many times, I don't think. having that in that position, how you should present yourself during September of 2020 is perhaps present yourself as being under stress, or perhaps present yourself as having been under stress. Perhaps present yourself as having, been under anxiety, or perhaps present yourself as having been under anxiety. Perhaps present yourself as the primary signification of this card is poverty. Perhaps present yourself as being poor. There's a church right here in this card. You see, they're standing outside of it. And this is stained glass window right here, right? But they don't see the church. They could go inside it, and they're in poverty, right? They're they're not looking very good, But if they went into that church, maybe they'd be given some new clothes or some secondhand clothes, better clothes than what they're wearing, right? They could maybe give them some food, Maybe someone would look at it as, maybe they'd send him to a doctor or something, right? So that he could get that foot of his checked out, right? But they don't see it. They don't see the church. They're just walking around. They're just walking outside of it. And they're, oh, poor me, right? So I guess perhaps, present yourself as that, as realizing that there was, a better choice, or that there's a better choice that could be made. Or present yourself as being, as realizing that a better choice could have been made, but not recognizing it. And that could help, yeah. Um, That's a tricky card to have in that position. To interpret that. Jeez, that's you don't see that very often in that position. I did okay though on it, I think. Anyway, card number 10, or no, card number 10. Jeez Louise, not there yet. This is card number 9. We have the 10 of Wands. And card number 9 represents, it represents how people see you, Geminis, during September 2020. It represents, a person who has a lot of things on their plate. It represents a person that has a lot of things on their plate. A person who has a lot of work to do. So other people could see you as having a lot of things on your plate. a lot of things that you're doing for once. Other people could see you as having um, as carrying a burden. Um, Other people can see you as being stressed. People can see you as being um, other people can see you as not pacing yourself properly. Um, so, and how other people see you, and what's actually reality is, they're two different things. Sometimes they line up, but sometimes they don't. Um, so I mean, with the advice of one of the previous cards, like sleep is important um, during September. Um, the limiting beliefs, curtailing those is important. Um, and to look at things, objectively, and look at things, with vision rather than being blinded to things is a good idea too. And, the victim mentality thing is something also to avoid, based on the previous cards and based on this too. So it's pace yourself. Um, Slow down when you need to. You know, and whatever it is, the things that are on your plate, just um, if whatever things are on your plate, it's they'll probably be done better if you don't overwork yourself in trying to achieve those things. You know, it's okay to take a break. It's okay to take breaks. It's okay to it's um, it's and it's a good idea not to stress yourself out too much about things. Like, 'cause this is you know they're um, because more because stress was basically one of the big factors that led Gemini's into September and anxiety. So it's a good idea to you know try to get a hold of that, is and to curtail that if you can, right? Because Gemini's, you're more prone to anxiety, you know, than and stress than most of the signs are, you know. And this is because your ruling planet is Mercury, So essentially, Mercury rules the nervous system. So that's why Gemini's and Virgos too, because Mercury also rules Virgo, are they're more you know they're more prone to anxiety and stress. Just because their nervous system is something that's it's more prominent in them, or it's more of a factor for them than it is for most of the signs, just because of that Mercury rulership, right? That Mercury prominence. So that's why it's not uncommon. It's actually more common. It's more common for sure among Geminis and Virgos, or people that of other signs that are have a strong Mercury influence. That they'll have nervous system issues of various sorts, right? Like, I'm not a Gemini. I'm not Virgo either. Um, I have one placement in Gemini, um, um, but for me personally, I do have Mercury prominent in my chart, and I had a um, sensitive nervous system too, you know, and anxiety was something that was a factor for me when I was younger. Still somewhat to some extent, but not anywhere near as much. And so it's just I guess the message is that Gemini's is that stress led to the present circumstances in September of 2020 and anxiety. So it's important to curtail those if you can. And I gave other advice as well that you can do. And it's just if you follow some of that, then you're going to be probably more calm and better able to make better decisions. Better able to do um, to do better, to be better, right? Which is ideally what we all want, right? We want to be better. We want to do better. We want to, you know, that's all any of us really want, I think. But I mean, the difference that separates a lot of people is that everyone wants to be better and do better, but a lot of people, they don't really want to put the work in. They don't want to make the changes, or so it's everything's a choice. Like, you can a person becomes wise, a person becomes better, you know by evaluation of themselves, you know and by making modifications, and by trying to do better, and trying to be in a better place when you make decisions. you know if you can do that, then that puts, for you Geminis, that puts you ahead of the majority of people. Because a lot of people, a lot of people in this world, they'll bump their heads into a wall, and then they'll bump their heads into a wall again, and then they'll bump their heads into a wall again, and they'll literally like walk into the wall, and then they'll take a few steps backwards, ow, and then they'll walk into it again. That's what a lot of people do, more or less, in this world. A lot of people, they'll just like make the same mistakes over and over again, and they just don't have the self-awareness, or or even if they do, um, they don't have the will, the character to actually look and say, hey, I just walked into that wall like 5 times in a row and my head's hurting right now. you know Maybe I should like turn around and go the other direction. And there's like, but a lot of people are just like, oh, but then I'd have to think about, what's the other direction like. Right? I have to think, the other direction could be even worse. I don't know. Okay, at least I know this wall. This wall, it hurts my head when I bump into it, but at least I know, I'm, the other side. If I go, the other way, I could walk off a cliff, right? That's what a lot of people think, basically. It's kind of funny. A lot of people, They'll do the same things over and over again, the same unhealthy behaviors, because it's familiar to them, right? A lot of people, there's like, they have this unconscious belief, better the devil you do know than the devil you don't know, right? you know, so, it takes time, and it takes, self-awareness, it takes wisdom, you know, and it takes effort, you know, to, um, to fairly judge yourself and to fairly analyze yourself and your own actions, you know, and if you can, during September 2020, if you can um, do that to a better extent, than than in the past, or a better extent than um, yeah, if you can do it in a better extent than you did in the past, Geminis, then you know, then you probably get better results. You know, and moreover, more importantly, like you'll feel better about yourselves at the end of the day too, right? And probably be a better person, better people too. You know, so it's worthwhile. You know, it may not be completely easy, and it may not be, it may take some work, but and some conscious effort. But it's not something that's but regardless of that, it's still worthwhile. Yeah, that's the point of it. That's yeah, that's yeah. Anyway, um, this is card number 10. It's the Six of Cups. This card represents card number 10 in the Celtic cross. It represents your fears in the present situation, Geminis. Um, in September 2020. Um, the Six of Cups. The Six of Cups is a positive card, but having it in that position, what you're scared of, it's it's a bit of a it's a bit of a murkier interpretation generally. Um, I'll think about that for a minute. Um, well, the card represents primarily it represents things like younger people. It represents it represents innocence. It represents it represents pleasure. Um, so having that in the fears as the fears card for September, um, Gemini's could be during September could be have fears regarding younger people, or innocent people, or um, or pleasure-seeking people. Um, um, it could be a combination of those things. Or it could be just one of them, or one or two, or something like that. But those are the things that, or the people and the things that Geminis are likely going to be, for whatever reason, scared of during September 2020. Um, anyway, for the final card, we have the Hierophant, and this is the outcome. So this is around the end of September. It's a trump card. Which means it's more of it's an outcome that's more so, for Geminis, it's an outcome card that's more so fixed. That's something that's kind of gonna happen, um, to some extent anyway, to an extent, um, regardless of something that's more so on the fated aspect. But I mean, depending on the choices that are made, it could be, there's still a broad like meaning of the card. So that means that it could go better or worse, depending on choices and all that, consciousness, and all that stuff, right? So the Hierophant is the final position. It represents several things. The Hierophant represents it represents it represents um, it represents hierarchies, for one. It represents hierarchies because if you see, it's the only tarot trump card that actually has three people in it. It has a group of people. Well, no, the what's it called? The Judgment card has a group of people, but some of those people are like reanimated, like what's it called? Uh, Reanimated people. So I guess they're, I don't know. But this is one of the only cards that has multiple people. So for one, it represents hierarchies. So that means that at the end of September for Geminis, that hierarchies and various organizations, and this could be like, this could be, this could play out in multiple factors. It could be, um, it could be like an educational organization that becomes more prominent to Geminis during the end of September, like a school structure, like a college or university. It could be, uh, it represents government institutions. Um, it could be, hmm, um, hmm, it could be, what's it called? It could be, the words on the tip of my tongue. I forget it. I'll remember it soon, I think. Hmm. Any bureaucracy. Any bureaucracy. This represents any bureaucracy. So a bureaucratic institution could become more prominent for Geminis around the end of the month. Any bureaucratic institution, any bureaucracy. Um, a school system, a legal system, a religious system, a religious group, or any number of those could become more prominent for Geminis around the end of September of 2020. Moreover, this card also represents, in some decks, this card is called the Pope. And in some decks, other decks, this card is called the High Priest. So it could mean that a religious person or a spiritual person or a priest or it represents generally a knowledgeable person. If this is a significator as a singular person, it represents a person of knowledge, of great knowledge and wisdom. If it's a religious person, it still represents that. It represents a person of great knowledge and wisdom, which means that spiritual or religious person could become more prominent in Gemini's life towards the end of the month. A person who's responsible, a person who's just and fair. A person who's perhaps a role model. Yeah. Anyway, that's the final card. Overall, it's not a bad reading. It's not the best. Like, it's not. I would say it's a good reading, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's a bad reading. It's somewhere in between, and there's leeway, like I said, based on the choices and all that involved, right? So overall, it seems as though like the situation, like it seems like it seems like an opportunity to kind of to perhaps modify and reevaluate your beliefs. And attitudes and all that, and to become a better person and to do better. So it's not a bad reading. It's it represents the things based on the previous cards. It seems as though like it seems like the issues that led up to it, this September 2020, it seems like those were negative, and or but more importantly, the distinction that has to be made is based on these is that there's a lot of blindness for Geminis before September 2020 that led into this. There's a lot of facts that were missing, and there's a lot of data that was missing. There's a lot of their eyes were covered in these cards, right? His eyes is covered in this card, and he's just having nightmares. It's all imagined, right? It's all in his head, whatever issues he's having. Sleepless nights are based on things that are in his head. Nightmares that aren't real. And that's the foundation card. And this is what's behind you, which again, the person's in the dark. Their eyes have been covered, which means they didn't have access to all the information. And they felt trapped. They were limited. But really, they were in a prison of their own making. So it's a time of reevaluation. It's a time of centering yourself, and so that you can be in a better place to make better choices. You know, and, the choices that all of us make, they affect other people, right? Generally, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they do, but generally, everyone makes choices every day, or not every day necessarily, but they make choices, that are going to affect other people, right? So if Geminis, if you are in a better place mentally, and you are more conscious about your decisions and your own thought processes, then not only will that be good for you, but it'll be better for the world too. You know, so it's um, and it's better. At the end of the day, everyone has to look at themselves in the mirror, right? So it's just it's some people don't care about some people don't really care about being a moral person or being an ethical person. They just care about their own selfish desires, and their own petty dramas or squabbles, you know? And they don't really care about doing what's right in the midst of all that. you know but like, if we're gonna if we want to turn this world into a paradise, like we can, like human beings, we're capable of it collectively. you know at some point, you know we're gonna have to go beyond that collectively as a species, and to try to do what's right and ethical, and to endeavor to be that. Because the majority of people aren't necessarily all that ethical. you know I'm not saying that they're below average, and the majority of people, they're just basically somewhere around here, and an ethical person will be up here. you know, it's ethics. There aren't a lot of people who are super ethical. That's the reality of things. you know there are a lot of people there, somewhere in between. Most people are a mixture of good and bad. And a lot of people, they're okay with that. you know they don't want to do the work you know on themselves. They don't want to look themselves in the mirror. They don't want to hold themselves under the microscope, because if they did, they wouldn't like what they had to see. you know that's the reason why a lot of people don't endeavor to become wise, or endeavor to become better people, is because they realize, even unconsciously, that if they did, then they'd have to look at themselves like they look at others. They'd have to evaluate themselves like they evaluate others. And the reality is that the majority of people, they don't have the courage to do that. And by courage, I mean the courage to look at oneself and see something that you don't like, and to recognize it, and to endeavor to change it. Most people, they don't have the courage to do that, because then they have to admit themselves. If they do that, they have to admit to themselves then that they're not perfect. That they have a real tangible flaw that they can not only see, but they've identified and spent time and energy identifying. And moreover, a lot of people are scared that if they do find those things about themselves, and take the time to find those things about themselves that they don't like, a lot of people are scared that even if they do, that they wouldn't be able to change it anyway. They're scared that they're not strong enough to. They're scared that they They're scared that they they don't have the willpower, that they don't have the heart. And that's not true. They do. All of you do. Like everyone, not just Gemini's watching this, all of you do. You have the heart, and the willpower to do it. You just don't know you do. You're scared that you don't. A lot of those beliefs that you have that you can't change, that you have to stay the same, that you have to be, that you can't be an ethical or moral person, a lot of those are just nightmares inside your head, inside your heads, that you're not strong enough to do it. But people are. They can. I have faith in them. I don't really have a rational reason for it based on what I've seen from people, a lot of them. But don't get me wrong, there's some people that they do. They've shown evidence, but a lot of people don't. I believe in them, like a lot of them, they're just caught. A lot of people, they're just caught in a nightmare, of their own creation. They feel that, they have all these beliefs about themselves, that they can't do that, they can't do this, that they can't change, that they can't become better people. So they avoid it, doing the work on doing that, because they're scared that even if they do find, what's wrong, the issues, which will take work and time to begin with, that even if they do find them, which in their minds is by no means a guarantee, but also if they're scared, even worse, that if they do find them, because then they're going to have to look at aspects of their personality, of their moral compass, their spirit, that they're not going to want to look at. And the only way to fix those things is to look at them. So all in all, there's a reason why a lot of people don't do that work. It's because it's not easy, It scares them. But the reality is that, like I said earlier, a lot of the fears that people have, they're inside their heads, and they're just there. They're not real. They're Maya. They're illusions. They're fantasies. They're completely subjective fantasies. And the truth is, it may take some work. It may take some time for them, to fix those things and to identify them. And it may not be easy. It probably won't be. But that doesn't mean it won't be worthwhile. It is. It's very worthwhile. So I believe in all of you. Yeah, I believe that you can, I believe that, if you want to change, if you want to be a better person, if you want to be better people, regardless of what your signs are, anyone who may be watching this, if any of you want to be better people, you can. And I think all of you have the strength, to make those changes and to, look at those aspects of yourself that you may not want to look at. I believe you all have the strength in you to do it. Now, will all of you do it? Probably not. But, I think all of you do have the strength inside of you. And the fact that you may unconsciously believe you don't, or consciously, or both, you do. It's just that, like this card, which is the card that leads up to the September of 2020. It's just that you're blind to it. It's just that you feel trapped and limited, but you aren't. You're just in a prison of your own creation, of your own mind. You see, people, the majority of people, people, they live and die inside their own minds. It's, and what does that mean? It means that inside their own minds is the key to them, unlocking their potential and, being the best version of themselves and evolving and becoming, a wise or an ethical person, a wise and an ethical person, and, all of that stuff, great person, right? But like I said, that's inside people's minds, that option. And a lot of people, they've actually convinced themselves that that they can't. And again, that's their mind doing that. That's their mind convincing them that they can't. That's their mind. That's their mind slowing down their evolution as a living being, as a human. You know? And conversely, the great thing about it, though, is that the mind also holds the key to your evolution as a person, your evolution as a people. You know? And that here's the takeaway from this. Here's the big, profound takeaway from all of this reading. Don't think for a single second, any of you, don't think for a single second that you aren't capable of doing better. You all are. And, I believe in you, even if no one else does, even if you don't. So, yeah. Overall, it was an interesting reading. Yeah. Over 2 hours, geez Louise. I thought my other ones were long. God. Anyway, yeah, signing off. Well, yeah, yeah, that's all I have to say. Anyway,